How are we this morning? The front row is doing quite well. So those are my peeps right there in the front row. Appreciate that. I can use that energy up front. Okay, well, we're going to start off with some words of wisdom, like I often do. And these words of wisdom you probably can't read are from Oprah. Oprah. She said, "Challenges are gifts that force us to search for a new center of gravity. Don't fight them, just find a new way to stand." Well, that is very pertinent to what I'm going to be speaking about today. And even Oprah can have very wise words to share, so don't tune her out if you have been. Okay, well, I'm just going to kick into it here. In 2015, well, let me see. Does everyone know what the Pew Research Agency is? Have you heard of the Pew Research Agency? When politics seasons come around, they usually put out a bunch of research that's totally inaccurate and misleading about which candidate's going to win, those type of things. Anyway, they are a company that researches church pews, apparently. Not a fascinating line of study, but that's what they do. No, I'm kidding. They study all sorts of things. Well, in 2015, they released a study. And this study was looking at the years from 2007 to 2014 to look at how the demographic has changed in religion and spirituality and churches, primarily. And when the study came out, it sent shockwaves through the religious community, through ministers, through churches all across the country. And here is why. Now, in this, well, let me get to that in a second. This also hit Unity as well. This also hit a lot of Unity ministers. We were shocked as well, and we're going to get to that. But this study has lots of charts and graphs, and I've read through it a couple of times. I've had to research it for various reasons. But I decided just to summarize it all in one graph for you, which looks like this. Religion is plummeting, and the unaffiliated are rising. There's a rise in what they call in this study, what people are calling themselves nuns and duns. Nuns as in N-O-N-E-S, nuns and duns. So nuns are people that never affiliated with religion and never will affiliate with religion. And duns are people that have affiliated with religion and they're done with it. They're over it. They've done enough of it and they're moving on, and they don't want to do any more. So there is this rise of nuns and duns, and primarily in the younger generations are not going to church, not engaging with that. So by and large, people are fleeing organized religion. In fact, mainline Protestants, this is from their own research, calculate that they have 23 Easters left if they can't do something about this. They have 23 Easters left. And the article that sort of came out to release this study by the Pew Research Agency started off with a very bold statement, which looked like this. The Christian share of the U.S. population is declining, while the number of U.S. adults who do not identify with any organized religion is growing, according to an extensive new survey by the Pew Research Center. So, ever since this study was released, ministers have been abuzz about what's going on. Not that they didn't see this happening in their own churches. Across the United States, ministers have been seeing a decline in attendance and income in their own churches. But the shocking part is that it's happening in all churches. A lot of ministers were thinking, oh, it's my particular church that's having a problem. It's the demographic we sit in here is changing. The culture is shifting. It's the way I'm speaking. Maybe I've gotten rusty. Maybe I'm not as inspiring. Maybe we don't have enough programs. But when the research came out and said, no, what you're experiencing is happening in all churches, there was sort of this shock. Because for a lot of them, they were hoping it was just them, that it was an isolated incident, that they could figure out a solution from one of the surrounding churches, but they couldn't, because all of them were experiencing the same thing. Now, some of you might think, well, Unity is not a religion, so Unity ministers didn't have really a reason to be afraid or shocked by this news. Well, even though Unity is a movement and not technically a religion, we are one of those entities that is grouped in with religion. We look enough like religion that we are grouped into this category where the nuns and duns don't want to have any part of it. Now, Unity ministers across the globe have been seeing and feeling this decline. And like all ministers and churches, we have been trying to figure out a solution. We have been meeting, we have been getting together, there's think tanks, and this is happening in all religions. There are think tanks trying to figure out how to save religion, trying to figure out what is happening, how to at least slow down this decline if possible. Okay, so why does this matter to us today? Well, among the various teams I serve on, and if you don't know, I serve on the Unity Worldwide Ministries Board of Trustees, and so I'm privy to a lot of information of what's happening in the movement. And I've been delegated to several different teams, way too many as it currently stands. I have a problem of saying yes when someone asks if I'll do something to help the movement. But one of the teams that I'm currently on is called the Focusing Forward Task Team. Now, this is a team that has been charged with the task of figuring out how do we modify, how do we steer Unity in a new direction so that it survives in the coming decades, survives and thrives in the coming decades, because the market is shifting so quickly that we're being quickly shifted out of the market entirely. So we have been tasked with basically predicting the future. It's no small task, as you might assume. Now, in this team, we do various things to try to figure out what we can do. We study a lot of other churches that are still having a successful run at it. We talk to futurists, people that just study the future and trends that are happening, and they can talk to us about what's going to happen in the global food markets, what's going to happen in the job market, what's going to happen in the climate, what's going to happen in terms of religion and social justice and the internet. They talk to us about all these things so we can try to get a grasp on how can we best serve people 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and be relevant and needed. So our team meets once a month, and we meet via online meeting so that we can see each other and we can talk. And we just had our monthly meeting this past Tuesday of this week. And oftentimes in a meeting, what we do is the different team members will go out and research different topics and then bring back what we found to the group so we can discuss it and try to come up with solutions and policies and procedures for moving forward. So just before our meeting this last Tuesday, I stumbled upon this article that I submitted to the team for us to review in the phone call. And this is the article I found. It says, new Harvard research says U.S. Christianity is not shrinking, but growing stronger. The subtitle is church-going and religious adherence really in widespread decline, so much so that conservative believers should suffer growing anxiety? Absolutely not. So this grabbed my attention because it was saying basically the opposite of what the Pew research was saying. So let me summarize the article in this way. It basically says, contrary to what the Pew research was saying with this shock and awe about the end of religion, not every church is in decline. So the Harvard Research Center actually went back through and studied a lot of the things that Pew researched to double-check their facts, and then they did some of their own demographic studies. And what they found is that, in fact, only liberal churches are in decline. Interesting, right? The more strict, fundamental evangelical churches are actually remaining flat or growing. Now, when they say liberal, it's not necessarily the way we use that term in politics. They're talking about a liberal approach to religion or Christianity, a more open-minded approach. So Unity interprets the Bible. That would be considered way liberal for most evangelical churches. So what they are referring to, what I see as the more progressive, open-minded churches in the United States, those are the ones that are actually in decline. And so you might consider Unity to be one of those, or the entire New Thought movement, or Centers for Spiritual Living, all those that are grouped into this category. It even goes on to say that children that were raised in a liberal household are less likely to grow up to go to church. And in fact, they are far less likely to have as many children as their evangelical Christian counterparts. So if you do the math on that over time, the more stringent evangelical churches will continue to grow as liberal churches continue to shrink and be outnumbered. So I shared this article with the team because I felt it was some information we had not discussed before. Each of us as individuals had run into some of these statistics, but it wasn't information we had brought to the table to discuss with each other, that really what is declining is what we have here, this movement that we are in, and some other churches as well. Now, after we presented that, the hour and 10-minute long conversation that me and the panel of ministers on the phone call had was fascinating and powerful and enlightening. So much so that at the end of the call, a few of us said, you know what, I wish I could share this with my congregation on Sunday. Thankfully, we record these calls. And with their permission, I'm going to share that call with you today. And thankfully for you, I studied video editing in college. So I've shortened it down quite a bit. Some of you are thinking, wow, I should go get a snack and some tea. I need some popcorn. We're going to be here a while. So before we get into the call itself, I need to clarify a couple of things that come up in the conversation so you can be following along in what we're talking about. So first of all, it is mentioned, a Hillsong church is mentioned. Hillsong is a church that is exploding right now. They are taking over arenas and stadiums to do church all across the globe. They started in Australia, and they grew so big that they've jumped the pond, and they're now all over the world, and they're growing like crazy, and their audience is primarily young people. And all the other churches are looking at them, not only to look at how they're doing things, but they're looking at how are they attracting young people when the largest demographic leaving churches are young people. Hillsong has gotten so big that you just applied and were approved to become their own denomination. That's how quickly they've grown, how big they've gotten. And then they have Hillsong bands whose songs you've probably heard on the radio and didn't even know it. They're huge, they're everywhere, and they're a powerful force. And they are a more fundamental Christian church. You're going to see a lot of the hand raising and stuff going on. In this phone call, you'll also hear us mention One Unity, something called One Unity. If you didn't know it, right now, Unity is governed by two organizations. Unity Worldwide Ministries, that's the board that I am on, and Unity World Headquarters at Unity Village. Since the mid-1960s, when Unity divided into two organizations, which Jack probably remembers, it actually happening before I was born, since that time, people have longed for Unity to reunite as one organization. And that is called One Unity, as we're working towards One Unity. That actually, the instigation of that started in 2015. The agreement was made that they were going to try to merge. So that is actually in process right now and is happening as we currently speak. So let's get to the call. On this phone call are the following ministers. We have Reverend Julie Armour. She's formerly of Unity of the Foothills out in Red Rock, and she's on the top left right there. She's now currently retired, and she facilitates and heads a lot of the teams that I'm on and the things that we're doing. We also have Reverend Dr. Ariana Platten right up there in the middle. She's at Unity Spiritual Center in the Rockies in Colorado Springs, just down the road from us. We have Reverend Richard Bunch on the bottom right there. He's at Unity of Richmond, Virginia. He's also on the board with me. We have Reverend Barry Vennard on the bottom left right there. And Reverend Barry is actually the minister that replaced me at Unity of Las Vegas. So every time he's on a call, I'm staring at my office behind him, which is really weird. That's my chair, and I put up those curtains on that wall. So I'm always like, hi, little office, I miss you. So, and then finally we have Reverend Tim Lytle. He's up on the top right there. He is now currently transitioning from Unity of Hawaii, packing all his stuff in sea containers and shipping over to become minister at Unity of Marin in California. So that's the team that's on the call, including me, but I figure you know who I am. So let's listen to this call now, and I invite you, if you want, to jot down any questions or thoughts or anything that comes up for you while you're listening to the call. Because I'm going to ask, if you want to join me in the fellowship hall afterwards. We have a circle of chairs to discuss what you've heard in the call, any questions you might have about this church or the Unity movement or things we're doing, so you can do that. All right, so away we go.
Okay, well, let's go all the way down then to the issues facing ministries. In my opinion, the biggest thing that's facing churches today, or at least the Unity churches, is the decline in attendance and finances. Would you all agree to that?
I would say that's the result. I don't think that's the issue.
So speak more to that, Chad.
Well, I mean, attendance on Sunday or during the week in bodies, the amount of money coming in is just a metric that we measure by, but that doesn't necessarily tell us why the attendance is down or why we have less money coming in. So until we get a finger or a pulse on why that's happening, then we don't really know what the issue is to address.
So that seems like a great conversation to start with. What we think the reason is for those two things.
Before, but Chad sent out a great article the other day. And it doesn't give the reason why it's just happening. It gave more statistically, I thought, Shad, maybe you had a better interpretation of these are the things that are happening. And the only place it's not happening is, again, and we've kind of known that, is in the evangelical group, and that has stayed pretty steady. It hasn't shown tremendous growth, but it's stayed steady. And individual churches have grown in that area.
Yeah, why? How is it that the evangelical churches aren't declining?
So my takeaway from that article, which I think, and this is my perspective, our fundamental core problem, which is nothing new, is a lack of focus in the movement. Truly understanding who we are and what we do. And because we have a lack of focus and a lack of awareness of who we are, we don't understand our market share. We don't know who we're specifically reaching out to. And so we're investing our time and energy in all sorts of areas that are just spinning the wheels in the mud. Surrounding those two issues is a lack of structure to execute on who we are, what we are, and who we're reaching out to.
Yeah.
And so I think the fundamental churches, they've had that down for decades. And whether that market share is something we agree with or not, they go after their market share. They know exactly who they are. They know their message, and they do it. And so and they have the structure to support that.
I think there's a lot to what Shad is saying. We've expected ourselves to just feel good and talk about our principles and just expect people to show up that need to show up. Instead of being intentional about who we are, what we're about, and to be real clear about it and to mark it. But like with Oprah or with Joel Osteen or with other groups, there's a predominance of new thought thinking. It's how it's packaged.
And right now there's so much trauma and drama in our culture that when our language from the pulpit is, this is up to you, you have to think about it, and you have to spend your time in spiritual contemplation, that may be much harder for our folks right now than we recognize. What happens in our congregation is different than what's happening on television and out there. What are they expecting? And I think what I'm seeing here is they're desiring a stronger sense of community because they feel isolated. And so we're actively looking at ways to connect people with people and talk about interior care as much as exterior service.
Well, I think Unity, the first thing you learn when you come into Unity Church is you can make your own choice. You don't have to come to church. That's not what we say, but anyone who's intelligent enough goes, oh, I get it. I can get this message anywhere. They're telling me I don't have to come to church. But why can't we say you have to come to church? You have to be a part of this community. You have to have this experience. You have to connect with people and take a hard line. It's not a threat. It's kind of what Barry Bernard would say. We are is going to save this planet. You have to be here to be a part of this, to learn how to do this, to help spread this message. That's how important it is.
What I think is going to happen is the awareness that humanity has to wake up and really engage in and take on the belief that we're all connected, that everything is connected in a state of oneness, and that unless we can operate from that, we're almost doomed. as a species. That's the message that eventually is going to be a message of salvation. And salvation will turn from my individual salvation, I go to heaven, or I get all the dream fulfillment I want, or whatever, to the, I think, a threshold that human nature has to encounter, and that will be to move to the next stage. I think if we hang in there and continue to say that this is critical, and continue to tell people that if you want to be spiritually awake, you have to be giving to this movement. You have to be part of that. You can't be spiritually awake and just be concerned about yourself and your own ego needs. You have to be engaged in something that is bigger than you.
Barry, I have a question for you. I'm right on board with you. My question is a question of demonstration. So how do we now become the organization, the leaders, the spiritual movement that is doing that, rather than just talking about it?
So that's the big challenge, is how do you make people believe it's critical when it doesn't appear to be critical? It appears that we could just keep everything like it is and things will be just fine.
It's a great question. And I think that, I think we are already a catalyst to that whole movement. And when I first came into Unity, it really was a great self-help organization I could buy into. And it needs still to be part of it, but it cannot be the driving force alone. As Barry's saying, and Shad was saying, I really believe that we have to figure out a way in which we can become known for our vision and for doing everything we can to promote that and move that forward. And the idea that we're going to change the world is huge.
I think there's also a couple of different things, or there are a couple of different things that come to me as you're talking, Richard. One is we have different levels of people in Unity, and so there are basic teachings that those newbies need to have, and then a whole nother place to take people who've been around for 5 years plus. The second piece that comes to me is the conversation around kind of how you train first responders. That you train first responders to be ready when the time comes. How do we, because Unity's language is all, we're going to stay in the positive language. We're creating with our words, we're creating with our beliefs. And yet what I'm hearing is we're anticipating a real change, whether it's climate driven or it's something else driven. We're anticipating a real change where people need to be equipped with the tools to be able to help each other and rely on each other.
The way I present that idea is that's what makes you available to the bigger picture. The bigger picture is why we exist. What you have to do is you have to awaken personally. You have to find a way to get free of all sense of unworthiness that you have. That you have to get rid of that, of shame, of all of those kinds of things like that, in order for you to be God answering the needs of humanity in relationship with other people, who together we become the Christ. That's the message. And you, if you're going to become part of the Christ, you have to have this awakening yourself and do this work. That's essential to it, or you're just not going to be effective at it. Your ego is going to end up, the fears you have are going to end up dominating your experience, and you won't even know it.
Like a Hillsong church that I went to this last Sunday. But what came through in that service, stronger than any place that I've ever been before of any kind, is how important it was for every person there to step into their gifts, to be a part of the mission of that church. But they just so emphasized community. You need to be here every Sunday. It's important to be community, and we can't carry on this mission as effectively without you. You are important. The gifts that you bring to this community are essential.
I really agree. I mean, I know what you're talking about. What the things that I've said that have been most effective, and I don't always say them every Sunday. There isn't going to be a God that's going to come down and save us. We're going to be it, and you know in your heart you are it. You're supposed to be it. You know that, and you have to be here to help make that happen.
And then we have to empower people to do it. We have to not just build community, but take community out into the world and do something. I think there are some questions that come up around, I'm going to want to know from us, what do we use that's current, not just the teachings of our founders, but what do we use as current? How do we justify that message of interconnection?
Now, if we are able to consistently and as an organization, as a movement, say that the future of humanity is dependent upon the shared spiritual awakening of all human beings. We believe this, awakening to our oneness. We also believe that each individual that shows up at this church is here because you have an essential role in that. You have to be part of that. Whether you think you're capable of it or not is irrelevant. You are. We could say to each individual who is here, you're here because you're called to be part of that awakening.
What do we see as the necessary evolution in Unity teachings?
That's a great question. I don't have the answer, but I have some ideas. As we were talking, one of the things I heard from each of you and all of you was the passion you felt for this. And I'm not sure that Unity as a whole right now, we're moving in a direction, has the passion for it.
Right.
I think that we are so afraid of being evangelical that we won't use the things that they do well in order to move forward. We're breaking through that. You know, somebody asked me not long ago, why did you come into ministry? And I said, you know, I really came into ministry because I believe that Unity has the message that people need throughout the world. I really believe that with all my heart. And my little advertisements, that's why I am very much in favor of One Unity, okay? Go ahead.
When we talk about One Unity, we always put it as something that's going to happen. We're waiting for this like official announcement. One Unity has happened. And I'm all for let's just act now as One Unity. Whether the corporations have merged, can we just act like it now? And while we've been talking, I just think unified things that each church does. Can we have a unified day of service? Maybe it's the second Saturday of every month. Start unifying our efforts so that everyone recognizes there's a global movement of Unity churches, and we're doing this together, and we have slogans that we all share, and that it's a bigger community. So we're doing it with thousands of people around the world today. And you can hop online and see some people doing it live. They're going live as they do it, and it becomes a thing that we can hold on to. The more applicable, unified things we do as a movement.
Good stuff.
There's a lot of good ideas and discussion here to help people to really think about what is our purpose? What is our mission? What are we here to do? Is it something that we can just do alone individually watching TV? Or is there some power in coming together as a community and doing this together? And
I think this is stuff that lay people really need to hear. They just, you know, I mean, what I found out on Sunday, we had a little meeting with our congregation, a small piece of them, and they couldn't believe that we're struggling to find people to help us serve. They had no idea that we can't find people to step up and lead a service project, that it's like pulling teeth, and that we always show up by ourselves, and there's the Groverland family serving, and nobody's with us. Behind the scenes stuff, they have no concept of the struggle we're going through to try to make this vibrant and successful and powerful and moving and transformative. They just show up and think it's sort of taken care of. If I'm sitting with 100 people, somebody here is going to step up and volunteer for the youth ministry when they ask for it, and they don't do it because they just have, it's that collective somebody's going to do it mentality. When you sit down and say, hey, we're really struggling here. We need your help. You sitting right there, I need your help. They go, oh, me. Oh, okay.
And not just do we need your help in-house, but we need your help to be the movement that Unity is being called to be.
Right. More people claim unity community, as their movement, that we're all working to grow, not just a small group of people.
Did you notice that I have the slowest internet connection? So if that's something you want to invest in for this church, we're working on it. I'm curious, when I thought about doing that, I wasn't sure if you guys would even be remotely interested. I'm in it. This is my world. This is my passion. This is where I give my time. I serve this movement. I wasn't sure if you guys would even be affected by that, if it was a waste of time. I'm curious if you just want to share a word or two of your reaction to that. Just you can yell it out, whatever your reaction was to that. You needed to hear it? No idea? Yeah, it's a good slice of people. You have a lot of big picture. Let's make sure we remain spiritual type people, and then you have boots on the ground. We need policies and procedures to make sure we do this type people as well. And just as an aside, the first One Unity event ever to be held as a joint effort to get out in public will be coming, I believe, in August. It's a March on Washington, being organized by a Unity church in Washington. It's going to be facilitated by One Unity. It'll be the first, yeah.
So then, Shad, what you would need would be someone here to organize people to go to that.
Getting bodies on a bus and get them up there, yeah.
Someone not just you saying that.
Yeah. And that wasn't me asking for that. That was just to give you a heads up that there is movement in that direction. We'll give you more information on that as we start to get closer to what that is. And the concept of the march is fundamentally people and spirituality matter. And it's sort of the subtext of the march is a million metaphysician march. So it's the church up there has done it a couple of years now. And for the first time, the boards, the joint boards, both boards decided we should be behind this. We should make this a movement-wide effort. So that's just a side note, something you'll hear more about. All right, so that was that. So for me, the words that came to my mind, I sat with that for probably 6 hours, editing it down. If you have an hour and a half content, if you ever edited anything that's an hour and a half long, and you want to make sure you didn't miss the key points, it takes a long time to get that down to 14 minutes. So I got to watch it again and again, and editing it down, this is the quote that came to my mind. Ask not what your church can do for you, ask what you can do for your church. I'm pretty sure that's how he said it. But look at those chompers. Look at the teeth on that guy. No wonder he became president. Just those teeth alone is all he needed. Amazing. If I had those teeth, whew, places I could go. Now, the theme that kept coming up in that conversation, and primarily pushed by Reverend Ariana, was community. She kept saying community. Tim Lytle kept saying the church he went to, all they were talking about was community, how you engage in the community. We need you to be here to be a part of this community. Community, community, community. And one of the stories I actually edited out because I thought it would sound a little too harsh, but I realized now I wanted to share it. He said when he was at that church, the pastor, the minister actually got up on stage and he said openly, he admitted, he said, I am not as close to God as I should be. And Tim said he thought to himself, wow, that's really humble of him to say that in front of hundreds, possibly thousands of people he's preaching to. But then he said, do you know the reason why I'm not as close to God as I should be? He said, because you people are not doing the work required. Now we'd say, oh, that sounds like some evangelical guilt going on. That's the type of thing they do. But there is an element of truth to that. Because a community evolves and spiritually grows together. And as more people do the work, they help uplift the people around them. Do you agree with that? Yes. It's a consciousness thing. So what he's saying is actually not inaccurate. It's something that might have been presented in a different way, but it's actually true. The more people that do that work and raise their consciousness brings up the consciousness of them around him. So in the new paradigm of spirituality and religion, in some ways it will require us to think differently and outside of the box. And in other ways, it will require us to go back to our roots. No longer can church be about just coming to get what you need. We have to go back to our roots of people helping people. That was the entire point of religion to begin with, was community where people could help people. And let me explain how that plays out here in Unity. Ministers talk about this a lot. This is something we experience a lot. People come to Unity oftentimes because they've had a tragedy in their life. And they find Unity Church, and here they are. And they'll be around for a few weeks or a few months, however long it takes to heal that pain body that has showed up in their life. And then once they are whole and they have hope, they leave. They got what they needed, and they leave. And the question I used to ask my congregation in Las Vegas was a lot was, now when the next person in pain shows up, where are you? Did you assume that was my responsibility to heal them? Because a minister and a ministry team can only heal so many people at one time. It gets to a tipping point where we can't heal enough people. If people aren't healing people, you flatline, you peak out. The church is here to help people so that they can, in turn, help other people. And what Barry Vennard and Richard Bunch were actually referring to when they were saying Unity was largely a self-help movement, that's what it's been for many decades. It was all about, you come here, we'll teach you how to feel better, how to have better prosperity, how to live better, how to have more hope. And it was about you. And they're talking about it's time to shift. Yes, we're here to help you, but more importantly, we're all here to help the collective. So it's really simple math. The church alone cannot shift the consciousness of this planet, but the church can shift and heal the consciousness of one individual who then could affect two individuals, who then could also each affect two individuals. And then, if you've ever done math, you have an exponential growth, which looks like this. But Barry Vennard was quite serious. It's been his message for a long time, and that was part of the reason why I actually suggested he be the one to replace me at Unity of Las Vegas, because his message is very straightforward and very foundational to where we need to go in the movement. And he said, you are here because you have been chosen, you have been called. And we need you to rise up and to get involved and to help out. Not just we as Unity, we as the entire human race. If you're sitting here today, you have been called. And as Barry says, I don't care if you think you're up to it or not, because you are. And it's necessary. This is true because the unity message and the unity movement is what will save this planet. And I challenge anyone to present a problem to me in their personal life or on this planet that is not solved by raising awareness and enlightening consciousness. I have yet to hear one. If you have one, don't yell it out. Say it to me in private so I don't look bad. But we have to be 100% engaged. We have to be involved. We have to be prepared. And we have to be poised for action. What we hear from the futurists that we interview on this team is about massive job loss in the millions, food shortages, giant migrations because of climate change, all these things. People are going to need a place to find help. And there's going to have to be an army of people there ready to help them. And if this army of people is ready soon enough, we won't have to get that far, is sort of my plan. You guys agree with that? So let me wrap up with this. Last Sunday, I had the pleasure of speaking with an individual after the 9 a.m. service, our first service, who was here for their very first time. And this person said to me, I didn't know something like this even existed. This message, this community is so important, they said. I'm staying for the second service just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And I want to adjust my work schedule to make sure I can be here every Sunday and during the week to serve this community. And I want to bring my kids because this is probably the most important thing happening right now. That was their first visit. Do you agree with that? Yeah. I agree with that, and that's the entire reason I'm in ministry. The thing that I find amazing is the fundamental Christian or the evangelicals have no shame about stepping out in public and saying, you have absolutely got to check out what's happening at our church. You have got to be here. This is the most important thing in your life. And I would venture to guess most of us don't agree with their line of thinking or the message they're sharing. Do you think our message is equally, if not more important than that one? Why are we so terrified to step out and say to a stranger, you've got to get to Unity of Boulder. There is something happening there that is going to shift the consciousness of this planet, and we need you to be involved. This is the most important thing happening today. No matter what's on Netflix. So again, you're going to have an opportunity to share with me and ask questions if you have them over in the fellowship hall. But there is no doubt the ministers on that call and I believe that this message is the most important thing happening today. And we can discuss that further in the fellowship hall. And that is the truth as I experience it.